Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast is a Christ-centered podcast. Established in 2019 and hosted weekly by Pastor Chris Busher. Addressing a host of topics such as the Great Commission, Christian discipleship, and often featuring interviews with special guests who are experts in their field. The views and events expressed on this podcast and all related materials belong solely to their author and not necessarily to the author's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. While all attempts are made to present accurate information, some information may become outdated over time. Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast makes every attempt to timely update any and all such information. Without further delay, here's another powerful episode of Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast. Once again, my name is Dallas Monticue, joining you here from São Paulo, Brazil, again today. And today we have a very unique episode. We have a podcast expert joining us today. He is a professional. He is the host of a podcast called Bite Biz. And he has an amazing show, an amazing following. And we're going to talk with him about all of the things that he discussed on his podcast. He is a business professional. He has so many tips and tricks how to be successful in the 2020s moving forward. And so I want to invite David onto the show, David Strausser. David, how are you today?
Oh, I am doing perfect. First, very humbled with your awesome intro. Thank you so much. Very appreciative of that. And I'm just really excited to be on your show, talking to your fan base and, talking a little bit about faith, about business. And you'll be surprised how much those two things kind of intersect together.
Mm-hmm. Before we start asking questions and getting to know you a little bit better, just first tell us, what is Bite Biz? Shark bait. I keep saying that.
Bite Biz.
Bite
That's because
Biz.
I told you that you were shark bait before the show.
Yes, you told me earlier, and that's why it's there.
Yeah. That's my catch line with the show. I always tell people, hey, you just became shark bait. But Bite Biz, this show, I've actually, I guess you could say, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I've registered the domain. I think it was 2014 or 2015, all the way back then. And podcast is something I've always wanted to do. I just never actually did it. And I opted for live events instead. And we would do these awesome executive luncheons in Los Angeles that were out of the box. I called them the anti-luncheon. And we'd have people like William Hung, the Verb Pipe, the song The Freshman. I'm sure you've heard that. We've had people like that come on speaking, and it was just totally quirky. We were planning, once I moved out to the beautiful city of Philadelphia for work, we were planning on doing a Northeast Roadshow throughout here, kind of built off of my LA model. But what had happened? Well, the whole world kind of shut down. So we had to axe the plans. And it was like, okay, well, we're just putting this on hold. Well, that hold, remember the 2 weeks that everybody was talking about, ended up being a little bit longer than 2 weeks. And once I realized that, it was kind of like, okay, I've got to find a way to get out there and network. How do I meet people? And how do I also bring people together? And that's where it just clicked one day. Like, hey, I've got to go back. I got to do the podcast. I already got everything. I've been paying for it for 5 years at this point. So I came out, we did the show. It originally started with the theme of, how to have your business survive, through COVID, how to get through the pandemic. What do you have to do? What do these experts see? What do you have to pivot in your business or digitally transform? But now that we're getting to the endemic stage, you ask a million experts, you get a million different answers of where we're at with COVID right now. But the thing is, it's here. It's probably not leaving. We're living with it. And I think most of the world is, adopting to living with it now. So it's starting to get back to business, back to normal. So what we've started to do over the last few months is, okay, we don't have to be so much how to change your business during COVID. And let's start talking more about what I call the 3 Gs, which is personal growth, professional growth, and obviously business growth. So that's pretty much a show in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. And I really like that you say that in a world full of sharks, learn how to bite first. I think that's awesome.
Yep.
That's an awesome tagline.
Yeah,
there.
a lot of people think that I did Bite Biz because of Shark Tank. I've never been a fan of Shark Tank, the show itself. Although I will say the Australian version rocks. I love it. I watch those episodes on YouTube, but it never had anything to do with Shark Tank at all. It actually, when I think of business, I think of people that are aggressive animals out there trying to get a sale, trying to, start a business up. These are people that are very, very motivated. And we are in a, shark eat shark world or dog eat dog world, depending, what you view. And I always view like, hey, in business, you have to be a shark, you have to bite, or else you're going to get beaten.
You're listening to the Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast. We'll be right back after this quick word from our sponsors.
What if the United States of America were no longer united? The USA is divided. In its wake lie 4 autonomous territories: the Southeast, the Pacific, the Frontier, and the Northeast. The last of these is ruled by an authoritarian copper-autocracy that uses AI technology, social credit scores, and the central bank digital currency to subjugate the masses. It's a green forest of greedy creeps and broken beasts. It's the place Finn Colligan calls home. Purchase your copy of The Divided Stories of America, The Green Forest on Amazon today. Entering your promised land may not always feel like your comfort zone. Thank God for the people He sends your way to speak life into areas you thought were impossible. Your persistence is creating your breakthrough. Today is the day to ask the Lord to move the mountains you can't move. With over 8 years of ministry experience, Joel Yonts believes that Christian faith goes beyond Sunday mornings at church. Rather, faith lives deep within our hearts and souls as we face every day of the week of our own lives. Purchase your copy of Your Mountains Must Move, Hope to Rise Against Mountains of Discouragement on Amazon today. And tell us a little bit more about your personal faith. Our audience love to hear about this. After you talk about that, we're going to talk a little bit more about the podcast itself.
Oh yeah, no problem. So my personal faith, I mean, it's been a long journey. It was obviously born into a Christian household, and there's been ups and downs. I think, like most people, my parents had a bitter divorce, and I was about 12 at the time, and that's probably where I tried to lean onto faith as much as I could, but at the same time, I think everybody goes through one of those moments where they're kind of like, is there a God? Like, how can things be so bad? Like, I feel like He abandoned me. And someone's got to be able to relate to that feeling throughout their life. And that's how I felt, being a 12-year-old, the oldest sibling, bitter divorce, a very abusive situation, I think, between both my parents and the position I was put in. And I wasn't really happy with that. It led me down a very dark path. And this is something I don't share very often, but it led to, drugs, alcohol, all that stuff. And thinking back, I will say one thing, there's plenty of people in high school and stuff like that. They were the good kids, they didn't do drugs, perfect grades, all that stuff. Look at them today. Now they're, meth heads and stuff, I kind of view it that even though that was the hardest part of my life, it was actually a blessing in disguise, because I experimented with that stuff, and it was heavy type drugs. I did that at a young age, my mid-teens and to late teens. And because I did it, I knew what it was. I knew what it was about. And I realized I had to get out, which is what led me moving to Mexico when I was 18 in the first place. But I learned that experience from a very, very young age, which has kept me sober then throughout the rest of my life. It was that's why I say it was a blessing in disguise, because I didn't have the temptations in my 30s to go out and start using all this stuff again or try something. It's like, been there, done that, know what it's about, not going to ruin my life. But throughout that whole period, I mean, when I did realize that there was a problem, when I realized that, you know, things are getting dark, like it felt like every day could be my last day because I could OD and I needed to get help. Faith and religion is really what kept me alive, just believing that there was a way out and putting my faith into God to be able to get out of that dark period and move into, a more healthier moment in my life. And it really
Yeah.
was that bridge I had to cross to get from the deepest, darkest part of my life to a much happier version of my life. So for that, I'm very grateful. And one of the songs that I think really helped me was, I better say this, but I'm a very honest, transparent person. I wear my pride on my sleeve as far as telling where I've been and all that I've gone through. But I think, it builds my character. It makes me who I am for today.
Yeah.
And I remember being unconscious. And I don't know, I was out maybe 12, 14 hours, something like that. It was a long time. And when I finally came through and, woke up, Aerosmith was always my favorite band. I've loved them, but they had the song Amazing on the radio at that time. And it's a song that I listened to a million times before, but it never struck to me. I never understood it. And basically, for people that don't know, the song Amazing was Steven Tyler's personal story of fighting his addiction and getting over his addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And, the song, the words, I feel like it was God speaking to me right there. Like, hey, here's your idol, your Steven Tyler, listen. And it's like that's what clicked in my head. And
Yeah.
then I realized all the things I had to do to do, and part of it was all my friends were addicts. I couldn't
Yeah.
get clean if everybody else I knew was an addict. It would only last for a month or two, and that's what ended up moving to the drug capital of the world, Tijuana, and I
And that's what
rebuilt a
sounds
brand
crazy.
new
Like,
life.
okay, I had a drug problem and I moved to Mexico. Like, I don't know if I would advise that.
Right. But the thing is that I went there to start over. The friendships I built weren't friendships that were built off of drugs and alcohol. Well, maybe a little bit of alcohol because it was cool being in Mexico and 18 you can drink, whereas in the States it's
Mhm.
21. So that was a little bit, but I never had an actual alcohol problem at all. So that if I had a few drinks here or whatever, that wasn't an issue. That's something I always was able to control. It was
Did
more
you
the
speak
hardcore
Spanish
drug
when you
stuff.
went to Mexico the first time?
No. But the
Wow.
benefit of some place like Tijuana is that there's a lot of English speakers.
Mhm.
You got to remember when, for a long time, many, many years, when the U.S. deports people to Mexico, they deport right into Tijuana. And that's where a lot of these people, some of them could have been living in the States for 20 years and speak perfect English. And then they all end up down there and resettling and building lives down there. So it's got a very high community. I mean, it is a very unique city. It's very transitory, a lot of people moving through temporarily. But it's beautiful. Some of the best people, some of the best foods I've ever had, and religion even became stronger down there because we just happened to live next door to a non-denominational Christian pastor who each week was like, David, come to my house for church. Come to my house for church. Come to my house for church. Finally gave in, and there we are
Yeah.
at his house each week for church. I will admit I was a bad Christian. I did not go when the Philadelphia Eagles were playing football. I asked him to change it. I asked him
Yeah.
to change the time of the service. He would not oblige. Those couple weeks I did miss, but I did go, throughout the week and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's been a long journey, the faith thing. It's a never stopping uphill battle,
Yeah.
and really clinging on to your faith is what keeps me going every single day, with the belief that I can make it. If I didn't believe in something bigger or better than myself, with God specifically, I don't know I would be the person that I am today.
Yeah. And it's unbelievable for our audience who know my story and Chris, the other co-host's story. We have a very, very similar story. I grew up,
Oh, wow.
my parents were divorced many times as well. I came into addiction at 16 years old, and now I live in Brazil, and I'm married to a Brazilian, and you're married to a Mexican. I mean, my
Well,
goodness.
Peruvian. Yeah,
A
my wife's
Peruvian. Okay,
Peruvian.
I'm
But
sorry.
yes, yes.
Someone who's
I
not
lived in
American.
Peru
It's
as well
just
too.
so incredible how similar our
Yeah.
lives are. And I
Yeah.
think God was reaching out to you. He wanted you. He
Oh,
knew your
yeah.
name. And my favorite
More
message to
than
say
likely.
is that Jesus loves the lost people. He loves the
Yeah.
lost people. And he called out to you, out to me, he called out to Chris, he called out to so many other people. If we'll just listen, come,
Yeah.
come. And
They do
that's
it.
it.
I think he does it different ways. Like for me,
Yes, certainly.
if I wasn't just waking up, I mean, you got to think there's a million different songs that could have been on the radio at that moment. I just happened to wake up and there's, all groggy and goofy and kind of out of it. But I hear the song amazing. And in my state of mind, that song made perfect sense to me. I mean,
Yeah.
what are the chances of that happen? Now, given it was the mid 90s, but it wasn't exactly like Amazing was a brand new single at the time either. I mean, you're probably talking 98, 99. I think Amazing came out in 94 on their Big Ones album. So it's, a couple years out. So for that song to come on exactly at that moment, and, for me to actually get it, it was a godsend. That's the only thing I can really say about that. And, one weird thing is a lot of people have that same story, about the song Amazing, that it's a song that actually has reached out to them in their lowest moments,
Yeah.
that have suffered with addiction, and they heard it just at the right time, and things clicked, and it helped them get on the righteous path. One quick shout out for my daughter too. My daughter, we named her Liv. She was born premature, 27 weeks or no, 29 weeks. Sorry. So very premature. NICU for like 3 months out in San Diego, and she's gonna turn 10 on December 27th. But we actually ended up naming her Liv, for two reasons. One, because live for life, in that type of term, it's not Olivia or anything like that. It
No, I
actually
was going to
is
ask if it's Olivia,
LIV,
live
live.
for sure. Mm-hmm.
Right. No, it's just pure live, LIV, the symbolized life and stuff like that, because she was born premature. But also her mother, I met my wife, her mother, at an Aerosmith concert in Lima, Peru, which is how
Wow.
we met. And then considering my whole life with the history I just told you and stuff like that, she's actually named after Liv Tyler as well too, as a
Mm.
homage to the path. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, Aerosmith through God, or maybe it's just pure coincidence, but it got me sober and it got me a wife. So
Yeah.
thank you, Steven Tyler.
I mean,
Thank you,
those
Joe
are two
Perry. Thank
great
you, God.
things, right? Sobriety and having a wife. Can't
Yeah.
complain about
Yeah.
that.
Speaking, hey, like Joe Perry says, let the music do the talking.
Yeah. So good. And talking a little bit more about your podcast specifically, what are some of the things
Yeah.
that you discuss? You said that you have a lot of hosts on. And so I think your show is very similar to our show. We're doing a lot of interviews. Tell us a little bit more about
Mhm.
your show.
Yeah, my show, it's fun. I go all over the charts. I probably should screen people better, but I just give a quick glance and I'm like, okay, yeah, they can come on. But I go into each interview blissfully ignorant. I don't study them. Why? I like to say that I try to do a Joe Rogan-esque interview without the
Mhm.
controversy, meaning that I want to go in there and I want to have an actual conversation, just kind of like you and I are having. two guys just here chatting, or two people just chatting and talking about business. I go down the rabbit holes. We try to make some jokes, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is learn something of value from the guest on the other end, because the guest that's on is an expert at something. And yeah, there's been people that are way more famous than other people. I mean, I've had Gwar on the show. I've had Life of Agony, The Verb Pipe, William Hung. I've had Jack Douglas, who is Aerosmith's producer. I've had a member of Aerosmith on the show. I've had a lot of celebrities on the show, but I've also have had CEOs of like from recruiter.com. I've had lesser known people on the show, because even the lesser known person, like for example, I had a great woman who works in the coal country, Pennsylvania, who's a friend of mine. And she went from a working in a funeral parlor to being a top-notch fitness coach. And hearing how she did that transition and why, I mean, I think that's an amazing story, because there's a lot of people out there that aren't happy with their careers, and they may be afraid to do a career switch. So I try to get those messages out. You know, I had Soledad O'Brien, the former CNN anchor, on my show. And she was on for about 45 minutes. You know, did we talk? She's known for talking politics. Not one political question. It was about being a CEO, a producer, a media personality, and being a mom during the pandemic, and how she has managed everything. And I got stories from her that you won't see on any other interviews. It's a very rare interview because it's a personal interview. I go for the personal connections with my guests, and I try to get them to tell me the story a different way. I mean, I don't want to hear verbatim what Tony Robbins is saying. I want to hear real life story of a successful person and their failures as well as their successes.
I think that's amazing, because there's so many podcasts out there in 2020, 2022, during the pandemic you started. There's so many podcasts. And so yours is a unique interview with a person that has probably had many other interviews in the past.
Sometimes I'm the first one, which, I mean, you could tell if there's an episode like today's, it's different. I'm doing a lot of talking because I'm the person that's being interviewed. But normally on my show, I try to do around a 70-30 balance. I do interrupt a lot of my guests, but if I interrupt them, it's usually because, you know, maybe they used an acronym and it's like, oh, you just said ABC. What is ABC? Can you explain that real quick? Okay. So that way everybody's on the same page. Or they use an industry term. You just said this. What is that? Okay. Or maybe, because you got to remember, this is their bread and butter. This is what they do every single day. So for them, it's normal, but they may have just said something and I have light bulbs going off in my head. It's like, hold on. You know, let's get a little bit
the audience. Let's explain
this.
What's going on.
Right. Because otherwise you end up having a list of like 50 different questions that you have to circle back on and never get to. So I go when the iron's hot, and I tell them, like, this isn't you've already let me speak more interrupted than I usually do my guests, but I try to say, hey, it's not going to be a monologue, you know what I mean? Like, no one's going to be up there doing 5-minute speeches except for maybe like intro, outro. I don't care too much about that, but we want this to be a conversation. We want it to go back and forth, which is why, again, I try to go into the interviews blissfully ignorant, because while I may know the main topic, I want to ask organic questions out of true, honest curiosity, as well as what the guests are probably thinking. And if I've already studied everything about that individual, it's hard to do that, because it's like, I already know the answer. I'm not going to ask that, you know? So I don't know. That's my secret, I think, to success and what kind of differentiates us.
I understand completely what you're saying. And from my perspective, I'm asking like I'm the audience. Like, I'm always, because I'm sure our audience have questions. And so I want to know personally, like, why did you move to Mexico? How did moving to Mexico help you, you know, in your business career? Things like this that I'm curious about personally. And so I think
I've worked for the Mexican government for 2 years.
Wow. Tell us about that.
So okay, you got to go back to the Great Recession, and I'll again, honest and transparent with anything. I could not find work. And I could not find anybody. I guess the term people use these days are living wage. I couldn't find anybody to pay a living wage, even me living in Mexico at the time. And so I ended up just doing consulting because one day it clicked. I know all these people in Mexico. I know Spanish. I've got connections. I got networks. Why don't I try to bring American products down into Mexico to take advantage of NAFTA at the time, which is now the USMCA, which is the free trade agreement between Canada, United States, and Mexico. So I was trying to take advantage of that. What happened was once I got my feelers out, I started getting jobs that were more centric around tech, but tourism tech. So, there are a couple clients like bordertraffic.com. I've done immense work with them where you can get live camera feeds on the actual border and see how long the borderline it is because Tijuana is notorious for having borderlines that, today it might take you an hour, tomorrow it might take you 6. Okay. And there's a lot of people that travel the border every single day because they live in Mexico, work in the US. I'm not just talking about Mexicans or Mexican Americans, but just regular Americans would too. Because you can get a dream house down in Tijuana for $1,000 a month, and the same house in San Diego would cost you maybe $8,000 a month.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot of people take advantage of that. And that's why they put up with the border commute every single day. And we helped, invent the technology and get it out there with the app. Now, on top of that, we had BajaBound.com, which is insurance for your vehicle if you were to drive down into Mexico. Very important. If you do not have insurance in Mexico, you will go to jail. It's not because it's a corrupt cop or anything like that. Like people think about the police down in Tijuana. There are those, not as many as anymore. Used to be much, much, much worse. But if you don't have insurance, that's actually, and you get in an accident, that's a serious, serious infraction because I was in an accident one time. I had insurance, obviously, because of working for Baja Bound, but I hit a guardrail. And, you know, luckily the insurance company got there just in time before they were about to throw me into a Mexican jail because I damaged government property, which since it was a federal highway, it was a federal offense. And I'm like, dude, I have insurance, but they don't care. They still arrest you. And then the insurance company has to bail you out. They basically give the bond. Yeah, so
Wow.
that's how it worked. I'm not sure if it's still that way, but as of 5 years ago, it was that way. I'm sure probably still the same way today. But that's why it's very important to have your insurance. And Baja Bound is amazing, and they'll cover you for all of Mexico, not just Baja if you need it. But I ended up working with companies like that, and that helped me build up a relationship with the Secretary of Tourism. So I ended up becoming the binational advisor to the Secretary of Tourism for Baja for about 2 year period. Worked on some really awesome projects, did some really cool stuff. And I kind of, as someone that had a mixed family that lived in Mexico for so long, I kind of gave them, the gringo perspective, I guess
Yeah.
you can say, as far as what can you do to make the city more attractive for tourists, for tourism, things like that, because they didn't really understand the American market. They think they did, but they really don't. And I was trying to help build that gap. Some things they did, some things they didn't. But it was a very, very, very small part-time gig that I had. I mean, I'm talking some weeks I might work an hour, some weeks it might have been 5 hours, or we did filming of Sam the cooking guy. We did his episodes, Dos Dias in Baja, it's called, 2 days down in Baja, California, where he was cooking on a skyscraper with one of Tijuana's most famous chefs. So it was pretty gnarly. I mean, it was really cool experience.
That sounds amazing. You touched on something that I want to comment that So here in Brazil, I'm an English teacher. I'm a missionary first, but I'm also an English teacher. And I have the podcast and other projects to support my family as a foreigner in a foreign country. And
Right.
you touched on something that I was talking with one of my students about yesterday, about being a foreigner and working in the country. Because here where I live in Brazil, there's a lot of Venezuelans that have left Venezuela and settled here
Yes.
in the city. They don't have
My
jobs.
wife has said the same about Peru.
They don't have jobs. They need to support their family. They go to the streets asking for money. They go to the supermarket asking for money. I'm not condemning that at all, just to be clear on that. Yeah. However, I'm the same person as them. I'm in the same exact situation as them. I came to Brazil as a foreigner. They speak Spanish. I speak English. Neither of us speak Portuguese. We're in the same situation, right. But I'm so grateful that I have an opportunity to teach English and to do the podcast here and so many other projects that I've been able to work with, that it's such a struggle for some people that they don't have this opportunity. Maybe it's because I was born in the US and I have this different mindset of, you know, work, like being a shark, you know?
I think the mindset of where you were born is
I think it's
important.
A huge play.
Right. I mean, for example, when I lived in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, home of Yingling beer and the 1925 disputed NFL champions, we had to throw the obscure football reference in there. But that was a very closed-minded place. Like, I'd always have ideas like, hey, what about doing this? What about that? Like, I always had dreams that were bigger than that place would allow. Remember my grandfather all the time, boy, get your head out of the clouds, you know? And it's like, how come every time I ask something, it's no. And that's where I escaped to, you know, Tijuana, but also California, because it's on the, people don't realize this, but think of Philadelphia. Okay, the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with a fence in the middle of the city. Northern side of San Diego, USA. Southern side is Tijuana, Mexico. That is Tijuana. It is one big metro area with a border between it. Okay. And I needed to go someplace where my ideas and dreams were able to come true. And I did that. That's part of the reason that I moved. And it is about mindset and those things of where people come. That's one of the biggest things I love about Tijuana, because in Tijuana, you will see some of the craziest things. And it's just about how people work to try to make ends meet, make money. I mean, whether they're painting speed bumps on the road and then asking the community where the speed bump is to give them a tip, or whether they have their famous zebras, the zonkies, which are donkeys that are painted black and white like zebras, that you take pictures with, that have been there for like 100 years.
I love this. But I love this. Doing whatever it takes.
It is crazy. Yeah. I love it. It's been an inspiration for me, because it showed me no matter what your economic situation is, you know, if you have the right mindset, you can make something out of nothing. Now, will you be a millionaire? No. But will you survive and be able to at least live somewhat decently? Yeah, you probably can. And that's what I learned at Tijuana the most. But my wife has said, you know, the same thing that you've said with Brazil and Venezuela, same thing over there in the Peru side, because multiple times I've asked her, like, hey, I can work from Peru. Why don't we just move to Peru? And she's like, no. It's bad because of the situation with Venezuela right now. So that's kind of bummed me out.
Yeah, it is very, very interesting. The mindset. I think going back to that, it's the mindset. And since we're talking about business here, I came to Brazil as a missionary, and I did missions in Asia before I lived here in Brazil.
Wow.
I lived in Thailand and Cambodia. And
now I'm jealous of you.
Again? Say it again.
Now I'm jealous of you.
Okay. I thought you said something in Spanish. I was like, I don't understand.
No. I was saying that I'm jealous of you because I've always wanted to go to Asia.
It was unique. One of the funny stories is that I did eat a dog when I was in Cambodia. That's a story for another time. But a barbecued dog, I did eat that. And
now, if you heard that from in the U.S., you'd be canceled. There'd be outrage, and it's sad. I mean, I feel compassion towards dogs, but I'm also not going to hate on a culture that is thousands of years
Hungry.
older than us. I
I
think they
mean,
know what
they're
they're doing.
hungry. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
how are you going to condemn that? But being in
Yeah.
Asia, I was there 100% as a missionary, funded by churches. And it was wonderful. God raised more than enough money than I needed to live in Asia and to come to Brazil to start. But I didn't want to live that way. I wanted to be a missionary, but I didn't want to depend on churches. Hey,
Right.
please, I don't want to be that guy that when I call my pastor, he's like, I'm not going to answer because Dallas is going to ask me for some money. I didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
I wanted to be free and serve God and help people and live my life, And so that's how I started doing business and English and all of these things at the same time to support my family.
See, you're an entrepreneur.
I'm an entrepreneur. And my wife says you wear many hats. And no, I'm a husband. I'm a father. I do whatever it takes to provide for my family, That's it.
And that's amazing. Credit to you. A lot of people can't do it, or oversimplify is not the word, but I guess you could say that they oversimplify it to make it seem like it's harder than what it is. Because it's not that hard. It comes out to having faith, not just in God, but also faith in yourself. Okay. Because when you start doing anything, whether it's a podcast, whether it's this, whether it's that, you always have doubt. Will I be successful? Will this work out? Am I wasting my time? I could tell you how many times I quit a job and then 3 weeks later, the huge $1 million deal I was working on for a year finally closed, because I gave up on it too soon. That's happened to me many times. And it really comes down to mindset, mind frame, determination, and being able to stay positive. That's huge. That's where you turn to your faith. When negative thoughts start to creep in, you have to kick them out, because if not, it's kind of like a virus. It will spread throughout your whole body, and then you're going to be sabotaging yourself.
If you could tell our audience today one overall tip for business, what do you think that would be today?
Number one tip for business, I'd say, don't be afraid to try. No matter what that is, okay? Just because some things already exist or something's already invented, that doesn't mean that you can't make it better. I mean, look at Twitter with the 50 different alternatives out there of all these companies trying to take down Twitter right now. I mean, it's the same mindset, just because something exists doesn't mean you can't make something bigger or better and improve upon what's already out there, so don't be afraid to try, and don't be afraid to be original. You have to kind of just let go of your fear and just have faith. But I think, man, I just walked down a rabbit hole myself. This is where most people mess up. They think, oh, I'm determined, I got a good idea, I'm going to try. I'm going to, give it a shot. I'm determined. Everything. They have it in their mind. Okay. But they don't really execute. They don't really go out there. And if you look back at their actions, can if you judge them, can you say you gave 110% of everything? And chances are a lot of people that fail, no, they didn't. Some people do. Some people do. Okay. Some people give 110% and it just didn't work out because they weren't able to learn from their mistakes and adjust, pivot, and then grow from there. But most people, if you literally give it 110%, you're going to succeed with it in some shape or form. May not be as big as you want, may not be as big as you'd like, but you're going to have some level of success. Most people fail because of the fact that they don't give that 110%. They only give 90, 80, 70% of their total effort. And that's where, unless you have other people around you picking up that slack, you're not going to have the level of success you want.
It never leaves the paper. It looks good on paper, but when it comes time to execute, that's it.
You just summed up the Dallas Cowboys season right there.
Wow, you can't do it. You can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan, okay?
Not a Cowboys fan.
Every Brazilian, I say, hello, my name is Dallas. And they say, oh, Texas. No, I'm not from Texas. And I say, my name is Dallas. And like, great. You're from Texas. No, I'm not from Texas. Come on. People often confuse that. And the Dallas Cowboys also get thrown in the mix there.
There you go. Well, I do like one Dallas, and that's Dallas Goedert on the Philadelphia Eagles. But I will say, that your story right there, it reminded me, this is really 10-second quick story, but when I moved down to Mexico, originally people would ask me, where are you from? Okay. And just being coal country, Pennsylvania, I'd always say Pennsylvania. Okay. Eventually I started saying Philadelphia. And the reason why is because every time I said Pennsylvania to people down in Tijuana, first thing I would hear in Spanish, oh, vampiros. They were saying vampires. And like, no, that's Transylvania, my friend. I'm talking about Pennsylvania. So I ended up just saying Philadelphia then, and that stopped everything. So
that makes so much sense.
It was kind of, I guess it was funny when I was younger, but then as I got older, I got crankier.
It's interesting how uninformed we are about other cultures, because when I was telling people I'm moving to Brazil, they're like, do you speak Spanish? No, I don't, but neither do they. So don't worry.
Exactly.
I've never heard of Sao Paulo, Brazil in my entire life, but it's one of the top 5 biggest cities in the world. There's just so much we don't know. We don't know about other countries, other cultures.
Yeah. Real quick, you mind if I give a shout out to where they can find my show?
Please tell us, where can our audience find you and your website and all of your other material that's out there?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple different places you can go. First off, you can find me on LinkedIn, David Strausser, the good-looking guy that wears glasses, that version. You can also go to davidstrausser.com for my website. You can find me on Twitter at dstrausser83. And you can also, find me on YouTube. Look up Shark Bite Biz, 3 words. And you can go to sharkbitebiz.com as well, too, to get the links to find it on audio, video, whatever platform you use. We're there. Just search Shark Bite Biz. And, any business entrepreneurs out there, even you, Dallas, welcome to come on to the show. Just interviews at sharkbitebiz.com. I do have a little bit of a wait, but I will give people from this episode a little bit of priority, and I'll get you recorded sometime in Q1 of 2023.
Excellent. David, thank you again so much for joining us. Everything that you shared, I think this was an excellent podcast.
Oh, hey, thank you. I'm so grateful to come on here to talk about, the how God affected my personal life, my history, talked about business. We talked about Shark Bite Biz. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And, had a great fun. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much, Dallas.
You've just listened to the Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast with your host, Pastor Chris Busher. Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast was recorded live in studio with final editing made before uploading. Subscribe today to Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast on iTunes or Google Play. For more fantastic daily content, visit Pastor Chris Busher online via Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't miss the next episode on Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast.